In the news this week, WA police allegedly deal a broken jaw to a handcuffed man. A WA News exclusive.
An Indigenous homelessness prevention project begs Premier Mark McGowan for support after losing their federal government funding.
Midland Public Hospital cuts reversed after 2 months' worth of media outcry.
A special analysis on animal welfare reform in WA, plus Dr. Andrew Miller's comment.
This is the Evening News with Ivan Leung and Sarah Smith.
Good evening. A young Aboriginal man suffered a broken jaw this week in what he alleges is a police brutality incident. Mervyn East of the Death in Custody Watch Commission WA is calling the officers involved in the alleged incident to be fired and charged with assault. Keith Sanders has this exclusive report.
On Monday this week, a young man was arrested in Kenwick for breach of bail. He's now in Hakea prison nursing a possible broken jaw. He says while he was handcuffed, the officers turned off their body-worn cameras, took him into a lonely piece of Kenwick bushland and assaulted him.
The police took him from the house. We got video footage and that of him when he left the house. Nothing was wrong with him.
Mervyn says the officers involved in the alleged incident are bad apples who need to be held accountable.
They're not fit to be, they're meant to be caregivers and, the people we turn to when we need help. Not to go brutalising our people. We're sick of it. We want them sacked without pay and taken to court and charged like anyone else. Nothing will change within the relationships of our people with the police until accountability is seen and done, both in the justice system, in the courts, right across the board.
The incident will shake the trust Police Commissioner Chris Dawson has been working to build between the Aboriginal community and the police.
Well, one, I'm unaware of the issue you've raised, but secondly, we have been working very closely with Aboriginal community. I have respected elders from all across the state who provide me with advice. We're increasing the numbers of Aboriginal officers amongst both our sworn, our auxiliary and our public service staff. We've got a strengthening relationship with Aboriginal people, and as we're in Reconciliation Week, I see a lot of positives moving forward.
In a statement, WA Police has confirmed that a complaint has been made to their Professional Standards Department and an investigation is underway. Police say the investigation will include an examination of body-worn camera vision.
Help us help you. That's the call from a project supporting Indigenous people at risk of rental evictions, crying out for state government funding after being dropped by the federal government.
The First Nations Homelessness Project has been successfully keeping vulnerable Indigenous families housed while improving their well-being. But they're worried it could collapse without support. Nelson Liu reports.
A busy bee completed for an Indigenous single mother at risk of losing her home. But it could be one of the last for a program helping First Nations people avoid evictions.
We're in a really tricky situation at the moment.
The First Nations Homelessness Project has prevented many Indigenous people from being kicked out of their homes, helping nearly 350 families avoid eviction. However, it's facing the end. Money, the cause.
Since 2017 been funded federally. We have exceeded all our KPIs right throughout the project funding from the feds. They're now saying they will not continue the funding.
The project has supported Indigenous people facing termination notices suffering from stolen generation and intergenerational trauma, with many of those helped single mothers experiencing domestic violence. It's been recognised as successful, with jobs for Indigenous workers and support for those at risk of eviction.
Knowing that you're helping, it makes you feel good and a good person. These days a lot just stick to themselves, so it makes it harder when you don't have a team like us that pop around and help out and just to lead them the right way in life,
There are now concerns the project could collapse completely.
If we don't get the funding, well,
none of this will never happen again.
None of this will happen.
And the team wants permanent change for the better.
We're sick of looking at them going homeless all the time, and kids suffering.
The responsibility for funding has been passed from the federal government to the state, but it hasn't yet committed to the project. Indigenous advocates are calling on the government to fund the program.
It will reduce the stress, it will reduce the hardship, it will reduce stress levels in the sense of attempted self-harms.
And they want $1 million for the next 12 months, but also want it funded for the years after 2021.
We are a rich state and can afford it.
but with it ending within the next month, the project is begging Premier Mark McGowan for help.
We really please beseech the state government to step in quickly to save this project.
Nelson Liu, WAMN News.
With ambulance ramping hours hitting the roof and code yellows at some of the state's largest hospitals, when WAMN News exclusively reported in March that Midland Public Hospital was facing funding cuts, there was a public outcry. This week the cuts were reversed, but Dr. Andrew Miller warns that it is only the beginning of what's needed to fix the health system. Helene Fung reports.
The state government has walked back $10 million of planned funding cuts to St John of God Midland Public Hospital after a media outcry. The cuts, which were exclusively revealed by WAMN News in March this year, came as metropolitan hospitals buckled under the strain of increased demand. In an internal email sent to hospital staff this week, obtained by WAMN News, hospital CEO Michael Hogan said a mutually acceptable resolution to the funding problem had been reached with the state government. Mental Health Minister Stephen Dawson said over the last year, the hospital system had seen a build-up of demand, particularly in regards to mental health presentations.
We have seen an extraordinary build-up of use of our public hospitals over the past year, particularly in relation to mental health. We are seeing more people with mental health issues present at our hospitals. It has been a challenging time, across Australia and across the world. So, the McGowan government is proud to continue to fund our hospitals appropriately to make sure that people can access them when needed.
AMAWA President Andrew Miller welcomes the decision, but said the health system will need more funding before it gets back onto its feet.
Any suggestion of cutting funds at this time to the hospital system was always completely ridiculous. The question is, are they going to step up and solve the problem in all of our emergency departments, in all of our public hospitals, in the same way that they've been forced to do at the Children's Hospital?
Helene Fung, WAMN News.
An independent panel will investigate the emergency department at Perth's Children's Hospital, the McGowan government has revealed. A 6-member team will inquire into the department, with the inquiry expected to be taken about 10 weeks. The review occurred in the wake of the death of 7-year-old Aishwarya Ashworth in the hospital's emergency department on April 3rd. It will focus on specific factors that contributed to Aishwarya's death, but also investigate the functions and operations of the ED and the hospital's clinic governance, risks and adverse incidents. The inquiry's terms of reference will include any matters raised by the Ashworth family in relation to the care of their daughter, conduct of the root cause analysis and recommendations made. Emergency department staffing, patient flow model, clinical supervision and education programs will also be considered, along with cultural customer service in relation to culturally and linguistically diverse backgrounds. The panel will also include former WA Chief Medical Officer Professor Gary Gilhord and Ashworth family's representative Suresh Rajan.
Western Power workers have taken their grievances to Parliament in protest demanding job security from the electricity provider. Around 800 workers gathered on the building's front steps at midday after striking from Thursday morning until Saturday, with an overtime ban until Monday. The electrical trade union says they're unhappy Western Power is using private contractors on jobs, and they want a commitment to change.
We're calling on the state government to use the power that they have now to legislate some equality back into industrial relations in Western Australia and back into the workers' pockets instead of the big end of town. They can do this. They've got the way, they just need the will.
Really, at the end of the day, this dispute needs to end. This is about permanent employment. We've offered that to the ETU. I'm surprised at their approach to this matter.
Drones have become an integral part of WA police operations, with an expansion program completing its rollout across the state. 72 pilots and more than 40 drones will be deployed across WA under the police air wing, with the last 8 officers in the Pilbara and Kimberley district completing training this week. Police Minister Paul Papalia says the drones help to ensure frontline police have modern tools to do their jobs effectively.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu may be out of the top job after 12 years after his opposition formed a coalition deal. The deal was announced just minutes before a deadline that would see Israel hold its fifth election in 2 years. If approved by Parliament, opposition leader Yair Lapid and Naftali Bennett would share the position, with Bennett serving the first 2 years as PM, followed by Lapid for the next 2. It is expected that Netanyahu will do everything in his power to stay in office, despite fighting several corruption charges. NASA has announced the first missions to Venus since 1989. The 2 missions are planned to launch between 2028 and 2030 and will explore the reasons why the inhospitable planet is so different to ours, despite their similarities. The Da Vinci Plus mission will study the atmospheric composition of our closest planetary neighbour, and the Veritas mission will map the surface of the harsh world.
When COVID-19 put a stop to Larissa Newington's plans for a career in the aviation industry, she turns to the family passion. This week, Larissa followed her father and grandfather's footsteps and graduated from the WA Police Academy as her cohort's youngest graduate. 59 new officers from Blue and Gold squads joined the force at the ceremony. And Police Commissioner Chris Dawson says he was pleased to see many new officers coming through.
We've got people who have law degree, psychology and criminology degrees. I think we've got about 3 or 4 nurses and people who are well qualified in life skills. And aside from that, I'm also pleased to note that we've got 6 Aboriginal officers graduating. I've been actively trying to increase the numbers of Indigenous officers. And it's so pleasing to see them coming through.
And that's our weekly news and current affairs. For more news at any time, head to our website, wamnnews.com.au.
Until next Sunday evening, from Sarah and myself, we wish you good health and good night.
Thanks for stopping by.